In this video, we will learn everything you need to know about lines and linear equations on both the SAT and the ACT. I'm Katja Seberson. I'm the inventor of the Seberson method, a scientifically proven way to learn anything fast, including linear equations. I know what many of you are thinking, like, come on, Katja, lines? What's there to learn? Y equals mx plus b? So easy. I agree with you. And at the same time, I know that the linear equations are a huge portion of the SAT and even the ACT math. So their job is to make it complicated. Did you know that the SAT and the ACT are not allowed to test you on complicated mathematical concepts because we need to even the playing field. If some of you have taken AP Math and you've taken statistics, the SAT is not allowed to test you on that because not everyone has been exposed to statistics, but everyone has been exposed to lines. So what do? They make those lines complicated. And in this video, we're going to go over some ways that the SAT and the ACT both make lines complicated for us. So let's begin with a question. What do linear functions look like? And I kind of answered this question already for you. Linear functions look like y equals mx plus b, where your m is your slope and your b is your y-intercept. There are a few hints I want to give you to help you recognize that what you're looking at is a line or a linear relationship. If the function has the greatest exponent of 1, that means there's no square, there's no cube. If x and y are separate from each other, if x and y are multiplied, you're not looking at a linear equation. If x and y are separate, they're added or subtracted, then you are looking at a linear equation. If x and y appear in either denominator or a radical, you're not looking at a line. You're looking at something else. So far, so good? Let's go over some ways the linear equation can show up on the SAT. Well, the classical, y equals 3x plus 10, where 3 is your slope and 10 is your y-intercept. The first way the SAT may want to make it confusing for you and kind of like not let you understand or realize that what you're looking at is a linear function. They're going to flip the y-intercept and your slope. They'll make the function look more like this, 3x plus 10 plus x. But if you reverse it, it's the same thing. The next way they can make it complicated is something like that. They can write it down as 6x minus 2y equals 20. You realize that if you rearrange the parts and isolate the y on this side, you will eventually come up with a linear equation. You will have y equals 3x minus 10. It's not going to be plus 10, it's going to be minus 10. And this one, believe it or not, but this is also a linear equation. Think about this. You're going to split the fraction. You're going to say y equals 6x over 2 plus 20 over 2. Then it's going to be 3x plus 10. We're back to the same thing. It's absolutely essential that you recognize that this is also a linear function. Remember, x and y could not be in the denominator, but if the denominator is just a number, an integer, you're totally fine. You are probably looking at a linear equation. Well, many of you know what a slope is. It's the change in y over the change in x, or rise over run. And if this is a line that's given to you, you can just calculate the movement over the y to the x and calculate your slope. This is a simple problem. I want you to pause the video for just a split second and come back to me with the answer. In x1, y plane, the graph which of the following equations is a line with a slope of 3? Well, which one of these 4 answer choices has a coefficient of 3 right next to the x? The answer choice is C. The next one, which of the following statement is true about the graph of the equation? Remember what we talked about presenting the formulas in an unusual way? There you go. 2y minus 3x equals negative 4. Right now, this function is not in a standard form. It's not in a slope-intercept form, so you're just going to turn it around. Let's take a moment and do that together. So we're going to add 3x on both sides, and we're going to end up with 2y equals 3x plus 4, and then we will divide by 2 on both sides. We will end up with 3 halves x plus 2. So your x-intercept is positive and your slope is positive. If we go back to the question, it is a positive slope and a positive y-intercept. The answer is C. Let's take a look at a more difficult question. Here we have a graph and we can only decipher what the slope is based on the graph. Well, it looks like K has a negative slope, then P is less of a steep line, and L is the steepest. What do they want from us? They want us to arrange the slopes from least to greatest. So the least would be K, so we can eliminate A and B because slope is L, slope is P, so it's going to be K, and then after it's going to be P and L. Hope this makes sense to you guys. But the SAT, I guarantee you, they're going to make it a lot more complicated. So now we're going to get to interpreting linear functions. And those questions look like that. There's a lot of words in the question, and there's a lot of words in the answer choices. What the SAT needs you to understand are the essential components of y equals mx plus b. They want you to know, or they want to know that you know, they want to make sure that you know, what is a slope. A slope, and the concept of the slope, pay attention, this is very important, that every time your x, your variable, changes and adds +1, the y value grows by the slope. So the amount the y variable changes for an increase of 1 in the x value. Take a look at this. This is our function, the one we began with. These are the values of x, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Every time we just add 1, going from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, from 3 to 4. But how does our y change? Every time we add 1 to the x value, we add 3 to the y value. If we plug in 1 for x here, it's going to be 3 plus 10, 13. When we plug in 2, what changes? We only add 3. We only add a slope. The second thing that the SAT needs you to understand is the concept of a y-intercept. In any word problem, a y-intercept is going to be your initial value, your starting point. So let's go back to our question. If we read it together, we're going to see that the equation is t equals 15n plus 12. 15 is the slope, n is your variable, and 10 is your initial value, or your flat fee, something that you always begin with. And the right answer is B. Next question. Again, a lot of words, and you get a linear equation at the top. Remember how I told you they're going to try to flip mx plus b and present you with b first, just to confuse you? They're doing it here again. So if you pause the video, you're going to see that there's a lot of words, but all they're asking you is, what does 1999 stand for? When the equation is graphed in an x and y plane, what does y-intercept? They also need you to know that b is y-intercept. And the right answer here is A. Next question. Did you notice that the number went from 17 to 29? This is a calculator section. This is going to be a little bit more complicated. The question goes like this. A photography machine is initially loaded with 5,000 sheets of paper. So the initial amount is 5,000. The machine starts a large job of copies at a constant rate. At a constant rate is a marker, is a verbal marker of the fact that what we're looking at is a linear function. What we're looking at is a linear relationship. So if we do like a vertical scan of our answer choices, you're going to see that only A and B are lines, although B comes first, 5,000, and then your slope, and C and D are exponential functions because they have exponents. Remember how we said if they're exponents, it's not a line. And the word at a constant rate right here tells us that we should be looking at a line. So C and D is immediately out. Now, we need to find a slope, because how can we choose between 20m and 75m? Well, we got to do some reading. We know that initially there was 5,000 sheets, and then we find out that after 20 minutes, it was 30%. It has 30% of the paper. It has used 30% of the paper. What's wrong with me? After 20 minutes, it has used 30% of the paper. Well, can we make some points? Well, I think so. Initially, at 0 minutes, that is our x value, we had 5,000 sheets. And then at 20 minutes, we know that we already used 30%. 30% of 5,000 is 1,500. So what's remaining? Because y stands for the remaining sheets of paper. If we use 1,500, this is what was used, then how many is left over? 3,500. Guess what? These are your points. 0, 5,000, 20, 3,500. These are your 2 points. Can you now calculate the slope? If you remember, it's change in y over change in x. So we're going to do 5,000 minus 3,500 over 0 minus 20. You're going to get negative 75. So negative 75 is your slope. Well, let's take a look at our answer choices. There's one more little piece of advice, or rather like a trick that I recommend. Consider that this is question number 29. Remember how there's only 38 questions on the calculator section, so 29 is pretty goddamn complicated. Now, the number 20 is in the word problem. So chances are a lot of students are going to think, okay, it's a word problem because it says constant rate and there's 20 minutes. So they're going to think that the slope is negative 20. If you thought that coming up with the points and figuring out the slope here was difficult, and if you're trying to like chance it, I would recommend to not choose the number that is in the word problem if this is an advanced number. The strategy doesn't work all of the time, but some of my students like to get these kind of hints and tricks. So from my personal experience, if I only had 10 seconds to solve this problem, I would immediately find out the word constant rate. I would eliminate the last two answer choices because I would know that that's a line, and I would just stay away from the exact numbers that are mentioned in the problem because I would imagine that they would want me to calculate something. So this is how I would reason it to be. There are some telltale signs that would appear in the word problem that would let you know that what you're looking at is a line or a linear relationship. Here are those words. At a constant rate, we just went over this. Another word is per, or each, or every, or rate. Because remember, the concept of a slope is that every time x changes by 1, y changes by the exact same amount. So every, per, each, those words are concrete markers that what you're looking at is a linear function. Let's try one more. Pause the video. I wonder if you guys remember that I kind of gave you a hint at the beginning of this video. I told you that this is a linear function. And what you need to find here, what they're asking you is, by how many millimeters of mercury will the normal blood pressure of an adult increase? For every increase of 1 in age, for every increase of 1 in x, by how much would y increase? What variable answered this question? Slope. What's the slope of this line? Let's split the fraction. Let's rewrite it as x over 2 plus 220 over 2. Did you guys know that x over 2 is the same as x times 1/2? 1/2 is your slope, and 1/2 is your answer. There's one more aspect, there's two more aspects that the SAT want you to know when it comes to lines. They want you to be able to create the linear function. Sometimes they're going to give you a slope and a point, and sometimes they're going to give you 2 points. You got to be able to do that. You could be using a slope point formula, which is kind of easy. Many of you know it, but if you don't remember the slope point formula, you could still figure it out. So in the function above, b is a constant, and then they want you to first figure out the equation of a line, and second, they want you to figure out the function's value at -2. It's not really clear that they're giving you a slope and a point, but if you know what you're looking at, you can figure it out. If you plug in 1 point, by the way, the point is given to you, f of 6 equals to 7. This is nothing other than 6, 7. So the x value is 6 and the y value is 7. So if you plug in 6, 7 into the original equation, you're going to be able to solve for b. So let's do it together. Okay, so this is our equation, f of x equals 3/2 x plus b. We don't know yet what our b is, but that's okay, because we're going to figure it out. Since we're given a point, 6, 7. We're going to plug in 6 for x, and we're going to plug in 7 for f of x. F of x is the same as y. So 7 equals 3/2 times 6 plus b. 7 equals, we're just going to cancel that. This is 1, this is 3. 9 plus b. Plus b. And I already started writing out that b is going to be -2. So what is our full equation? It's f of x equals 3/2 x minus 2. Well, how do we find f of negative 2? We're just going to plug in negative 2 into this equation, and we're going to get negative 3 minus 2, which is going to be negative 5, which is going to be our answer, and the answer is A. Another example, which of the following is an equation of a line in an x and y plane that has the slope of 2 and passes through the point 0, 3. So let's try this one. Pause the video, and once you unpause, we're going to be solving it together. So here they give us the slope. The slope is 2, so we're going to do y equals 2x plus b. The b is unknown, but we can figure it out because we are given the point 0, 3. Remember how we at the beginning said that b is also a y-intercept? So you don't really need to plug anything in. If you're given the point 0, 3, 3 is your y-intercept. So it's going to be y equals 2x plus 3. Answer choice A. Next problem. A line in x and y plane passes through the origin and has a slope of 1/7. Which of the following points lies on the line? Well, they give us a critical piece of information. They tell us that the line passes through the origin. If it passes through the origin, that means that the y-intercept is 0. If you see that the SAT problem says passes through the origin, you know that the point 0, 0 belongs to the line, and then there is no b. That means b equals 0. Y equals, and then they tell us that the slope is 1/7, so it's going to be 1/7 x plus 0. That is your equation of a line. And then they tell us, they ask which of the following points lies on the line. So instead of asking us with the equation of a line, they ask us which point lies on the line. And if you keep plugging in, if we plug in the first one, a, 0, 7, plug in 0 for x, we're not going to get 7, so a doesn't work. If we plug in 1 for x, y is not going to be 7, so the b doesn't work. If we plug in 7 for x, we're going to get 1, because 1/7 times 7 is 1, and the answer choice C doesn't work because it equals to 7, 7. But let's take a look at this, 14, 2. Well, looks like it will work because 1/7 times 14, if we simplify, divide by 7, 1, this is going to be 2, this is going to be equal to 2. So the answer choice is D. Just to recap, it's very important to know that if a line passes through the origin, there is no b. This will give you time, this will give you the edge. Another thing, if you're given a point like 0, -4, you don't need to be looking for your b. Now, let's go and take a look at another aspect of linear functions that the SAT can test you on. They are going to ask you to find the equation of a line by giving you just 2 points. And they could be very inventive. They can just give you 2 points, like here in problem number 15, they tell you that it's 2, 4 and 0, 1. 0, 1 means 1 is your b, your y-intercept. And you can just take a look at these answer choices, and it's very clear that the answer is D, because that's the only one that has a y-intercept plus 1. Or they can give you the points, and they can present it to you in a graph. They don't necessarily tell you what the points are, but you can figure out that this is going to be 0, 3, and this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that this is going to be 6, 0. And then, from having these 2 points, you can calculate your slope. And how do you do that? You will calculate the slope by calculating first the change in y over the change in x, and then you will plug in, once you have the slope, you will plug in one of the points back into your equation and solve for b. So these are the 2 points that we got, and let's do the slope formula. We're going to do 3 minus 0 equals 0 minus 6. And that is going to be 3 over -6, which is the same as -1/2. So this is the slope of this line. So let's begin writing the equation of a line. So this is going to be y equals -1/2 x, and I don't need to plug anything in because I can see what my y-intercept is. It's going to be plus 3. It's -1/2 x plus 3. This is my function. But if you take a look at the answer choices right here, none of them look exactly like this guy. So what do we need to do? We actually need to mess around with the answer choices, rearrange them, and make them look a lot more like the classical slope-intercept form. So let's start with A. Answer choice A says x plus 2y equals to 6. Well, let's isolate y. by subtracting x, and negative x plus 6, and then we need to divide everything by 2. Oh, looks like this is going to work. Negative 1/2 x plus 3. Identical match. So the right answer here is A. The next question, question 19. The graph of a line is and the x and y plane passes through point 1, 4 and crosses the x-axis at point 2, 0. The line crosses the y-axis at point 0, b. What's the value of b? So this is a grid-in question. This is a non-calculator question. Actually surprised that they made it into question number 19, which is supposedly a difficult question. But this is pretty easy. 1, 4, 2, 0, and what they want us to find is b. We're going to use the slope formula. It's going to be 4 minus 0 over 1 minus 2, and that is going to equal to 4 over negative 1, which is going to give us negative 4. So the slope is negative 4x plus b. Now we're going to plug in one of the formulas. I like to plug this one in. It's going to be 0 equals negative 8 plus b. Well, if we isolate b, we're going to see that b is 8, and the right answer here is 8, because they were asking for 0, b, which is going to be 0, 8. 8 is the right answer. One more question on this specific topic, but again, the SAT have taken it up a notch and made it a little bit more complicated. They're kind of giving you 2 points, but not really. They're saying that there's a point, a, 0, and then they're giving you a point 0, b. A and b, we know that both are constants, and we also know that a plus b equals to 0. Do not underestimate the importance of this statement. A plus b equals to 0. And we also know that a does not equal to b. Well, duh, because no numbers that are the same can equal to 0. Oh, if we thought that it was 0, 0, got it. So we know that a does not equal to b, so that means a and b are not 0. But what could it be? A and b could be any numbers as long as one is the positive number and another one is negative. So whenever I see a problem like this one, when there's a lot of hypothetical scenarios, when there's like an A and a B and an A plus B, my brain kind of just gets confused. So I like to give myself a concrete example. And I always plug in a number. What if A was 2 and B was negative 2? So A was 2 and then B was negative 2. Would this equation stand? Absolutely it will. So we're going to do this. 2, 0, 0, negative 2. These are now our points, and all we need is we need to figure out the slope. Well, we'll use the slope-intercept formula. It's going to be negative 2 minus 0 over 0 minus 2. Negative 2 minus 0 is negative 2 over negative 2. Negative 2 over negative 2 is 1. 1 is a positive number, so the answer is A. The slope is positive. This is another question. This is pretty complicated, and dutifully so. It's problem number 28 on the calculator section. I want you to pause this video and try to solve it. All right, I hope you gave it an honest shot. Let's take a look at this problem. A minus 12, x equals A plus 8. Well, first of all, the question is telling us that the equation has no solution. When does a system of linear equations have no solution? When two lines are parallel. What happens to the slopes when two lines are parallel? The slopes are the same. What is the slope of this line? And then what is the slope of this line? The slope of the first line is A minus 12. This whole thingy is going to be a slope. What is the slope of this line on the right? If you said A, I want you to think again. A slope is a number that is attached to the variable. Do you see a variable x here on the right-hand side? I don't. But we could imagine that there was like 0x here. So the variable is here, but the coefficient in front of it is 0. So the slope on this side is A minus 12, and the slope on this side is 0. Can you solve for A now? A equals 12, and that is your answer. I understand this is a little bit complicated, but the more you practice with problems like these, and the more you drill it into your mind that if there is no solution, that the slopes have to be the same, and if there is no variable on one of the sides, then the slope is just 0. One more thing that we got to discuss, which I kind of mentioned right now, parallel and perpendicular lines. When the lines are parallel, the slope is the same. If the slope of one line is 2/3 and the slope of another line is 2/3. But in order for them to be parallel, you have to have different y-intercepts. Because if the two lines have the same slopes and the same y-intercepts, they're going to be the same exact line. And if the two slopes are negative reciprocals of each other, if you don't know what negative reciprocal is, I can demonstrate. 2/3 and -3/2. So you're going to flip the number and you're going to put a negative sign in the front. These are going to be perpendicular. And let's tackle this problem together. In the x and y plane, line L is parallel to line K. What is the value of P? Well, this is a multi-step problem. I want you to pause the video, try to solve it, and then we'll solve it together. Okay, so before we can find P, we need to find the slope of the line L. We're given 2 points, 0, 2, -5, 0. We're going to find the slope. 2 minus 0 over 0 minus -5, which is going to be 2/5, because minus is going to give us a plus. So the slope of the line L is 2/5. What does that mean? That the slope of the line K will also be 2/5. So let's start building K. Y equals 2/5 x plus b. We still don't know what our b is, but that's okay because we have 1 point, which is 0, -4. Guess what? We already know what our b is. We don't need to plug anything in because anytime we have 0, something, that means that is the y-intercept. So the equation of the line K looks like that. 2/5 x plus -4. Now what we're going to do is we're going to plug in. We have this point and we need to find P. So we're going to plug in 0 for x, for 0 for y, I apologize. So 0 equals 2/5 x minus 4. In order to isolate x by itself, we're going to add 4 on both sides. So we're going to have 4 equals 2/5 x. And now, in order to isolate x by itself completely, we're going to multiply by 5/2. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. I'm going to multiply this side and this side. When we take 4 and we multiply it by 5/2, we're going to simplify this, and we're going to get 10. So x equals 10. Hope this makes sense to you guys. Let's go back to the answer choices, and it looks like D is the right answer. One more problem, 19. Pause this video. It's not too complicated, although it's 19. Try to solve it by yourself. Okay, let's do it now together. You know that the slope is 3, and you know that line K is parallel to line L. So the slope of line K will be the same, 3. So we can start building it out. It's 3x plus b. We don't know what b is, but we're given a point on line K. 3, 10. What are we going to do? We're going to plug in 3 for x, and we're going to plug in 10 for y. We're going to say 10 equals 3 times 3 plus b, and then we're going to say that b equals 10 minus 9, and then b equals 1. Then if you look at your answer choices, you're going to see that one of the answer choices matches what we just said. Our answer choice, D. One more thing, pause the video, try to solve it by yourself. Well, here, they're not giving you the equation of a line, but you're perfectly capable of creating the equation of a line, although you're not even given points. You can figure it out. Guess what? This is going to be a point, -5, 0. And then the next point, the y-intercept, is going to be 0, 3. You may not know your slope yet, but you already know your y-intercept. The y-intercept is going to be 3. Well, let's calculate the slope next. The slope is going to be 0 minus 3, then it's going to be -5 minus 0, and that's going to be 3/5. 3/5 is your slope. The equation of this line is 3/5 x plus 3. 3/5 is the slope, 3 is the y-intercept. Now, in the x and y plane above, the line M is perpendicular to line L. Well, what line is going to be perpendicular to this one? What does the slope have to be? The slope has to be a negative reciprocal. What is a negative reciprocal of 3/5? Negative 5/3. So the slope of line M is going to be negative 5/3 x plus b. We don't know the b yet. Okay, let's take a look at the answer choices. None of these answer choices are in a classical slope-intercept form, so we need to turn them into the slope-intercept form. Let's start with A. 5x plus 3y plus 3 equals to 0. How do we isolate y and leave it by itself? 3y equals negative 5x minus 3. Then we're going to divide everything by 3. We'll have y equals negative 5/3 x minus 1. This looks exactly like something we were looking for. We were looking for an equation of a line with a slope negative 5/3, and this is negative 5/3. We got lucky. The right answer is A. Last but not least, in the x and y plane, line L has a y-intercept of negative 13. So they already give it to you. They even say that that's a y-intercept. So I'm going to start my equation. Minus 13. I don't know my slope yet, but I already know my y-intercept. And it's perpendicular to the line with this equation. So our line is perpendicular to this line. Remember, perpendicular, negative reciprocal. A negative reciprocal of this is going to be 3/2. So y equals 3/2 x minus 13. And then they want us to know if a point 10 comma b is on the line, is on our line. What is the value of b? Well, that's easy because we're just going to plug in 10 for x here and figure it out. So y equals 3/2 times 10 minus 13. Well, we're going to simplify this. This is 1, this is 5. 3 times 5 is 15. 15 minus 13 equals to 2. So our answer is 2. There's one more thing that the SAT and the ACT would want you to do in regard to the linear functions, and that is finding your x and y intercept. And it's a little bit confusing because in order to find the x intercept, you're going to make your y 0. And in order to find the y intercept, you're going to make your x 0. So just like a little bit crisscrossed. So a classical example would look like this. The graph of the equation above in x and y plane is a line. Tell you it's a line, although we could see it. What is the coordinate of the x-intercept? Remember, to find an x-intercept, you need to make y 0. And you can just say 4x equals to 2. If 4x equals to 2, what does x equal to? X equals to 1/2. One more, the line with an equation, and then whenever there are fractions as coefficients, please don't worry. 4/5 x plus 1/3 y equals to 1, and it's graphed in the x and y plane. What is the x-coordinate of the x-intercept of the line? X-coordinate of the x-intercept. Remember, how do we find x-intercept? We find it through making y 0. Well, we're just going to make y 0. We're going to get 4/5 x equals to 1. You can either do it in a calculator because this is definitely a calculator section, but I'm just going to do it out by hand. And then I'm going to multiply. I'm going to say that 4x equals to 1, and I'm going to say 4x equals to 5, and then I'm going to say that x equals to 5/4. And the right answer here is 5/4. I hope this video really helped you guys to understand what is required of you to know about lines. What does it mean to interpret the slope? What does it mean to create an equation of a line? What lines look like, and what is required from you? Please let me know if you want me to create more of these math videos for you guys. Give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget, every month when you leave a comment below a video, you get entered into the draw where you can win a free hour of tutoring with me. And we can talk about math, we can talk about grammar, reading, or anything learning related. I look forward to talking to you in person. Bye.